Hello, good morning, and welcome. My name is Eric Wiedeke. It is April 21st, 2025, and this is the first episode of a show that I'm going to start calling Marlins Monday. It's going to be a weekly show every Monday on the Marlins, kind of giving a state of the franchise here for the Miami Marlins. It's going to be on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as we give you the best sports coverage in all of South Florida, whether it's the Marlins, the Heat, the Panthers, the Hurricanes, the Dolphins, you name it. We got it. Like, comment, subscribe, help support everything we do. Thank you guys so much for that. And I also want to thank Prize Picks for helping the channel do everything that it does. Use promo code 5FIVE for $50 in bonus funds on your first lineup entry of $5 or more. That's code 5FIVE. Choose 2 players, more or less on a given prop, and make your money with Prize Picks. But I do want to get into things here with the Miami Marlins, and it is a loaded one today, as there is a lot of Marlins news kind of across the ether here. And I understand it's probably been about a little while since I've put anything up on the Marlins, so there's definitely no shortage of things for me to talk about. Been on a little bit of a vacation, gotten a little sick, probably could hear it in my voice, but we persist. So the first thing is the Marlins snap a 5-game losing streak. Obviously, they were swept by the Diamondbacks kind of unceremoniously in their 3-game homestand at Lone Depot Park. And it looked like they were headed the same way against the Philadelphia Phillies over the weekend at Citizens Bank Park in Philly. The Marlins almost completed the comeback on Saturday, scoring 6 ninth-inning runs in an 11-10 loss. But they do complete the comeback yesterday. Javier Sanoja, the huge game, his first career homer, 5 runs batted in. So a fantastic day for him. Marlins 3 games under here going into a homestand against the Reds upcoming. And it's going to be a crucial time for the franchise here. But I do want to talk about a little bit of what happened in that series against Philadelphia first. So just a couple things. Number one, Griffin Conine goes down. Looks like he's got a separated left shoulder on that slide into second base on Saturday. So that was unfortunate news for him. As a corresponding move, the Marlins did call up Ronnie Simone, a utility guy, infielder, outfielder from AAA, who they had signed to a minor league contract over the winter from Tampa Bay. The 25-year-old Ronnie Simone this year was off to a scorching start at AAA Jacksonville, hitting .354 with a .441 on base and a .521 slugging, good for a .962 OPS. He'll continue to get those opportunities to kind of fill in, whether it's the infield, the outfield, what have you. Kind of a similar profile to a Javier Sanoja, maybe a little bit more power, a little bit less plate discipline. He does tend to strike out just a little bit more, but Sanoja is exceptional in that department, so it's not necessarily a huge knock on Simone that he strikes out more than Javi Sanoja. And then on top of that, Derek Hill also went down with a wrist injury retroactive to April 17th. So the outfield now, it looks like, is going to be for a little while some combination of Kyle Stowers, Griffin Conine, and Dane Myers. Hopefully this results in a guy like Myers getting a little bit more everyday opportunity. Myers this season has been fantastic defensively out in center field, and he's also giving you an .801 OPS at the dish this year, .333 average, .349 on base, providing a little bit of that power speed combo for the Marlins. Had a fantastic bunt last night to help push the Marlins towards that 7-5 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. But the big story for me, going back really this entire week, is the pitching staff. The starting pitching has not been good outside of Max Meyer. I know I ironically last week, was going into the Diamondback series. It was, these guys are actually pitching pretty well and they're finding ways. But it looks like that's kind of flipped on its head since then. And I really want to spotlight pretty much everybody in the rotation except for Max Meyer, who's been pretty good to this point. But you've got a guy like Cal Quantrill, and I understand this. These are very small doses here. These are minuscule sample sizes that we're dealing with. But you've got a guy in Quantrill right now who's posting an 831 earned run average. He's allowing 14 hits per 9 innings, 380 batting average against, and it's not like he's getting BABIP. BABIP is 403. So it's not that far off. It's not a ridiculous like, oh, guys are putting the ball in play and hitting 600 on it, and netting him that 380 batting average against. That's pretty in line with what you would expect for a 380 batting average against. So I don't know what the Marlins plan is there. Right now, it doesn't seem like they have the depth to kind of make those moves, and they're not willing to be, or, super aggressive with guys like Snelling and Mazer, who would probably seem to be the next real future pieces in the rotation, if that's the button that they want to push. Both of those guys off the solid starts in their respective leagues, AAA for Mazer, AA for Snelling. But it seems like they might be a little bit further away. Valente Belloso, since being sent down to Jacksonville, has been lights out there. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets a call to get a spot start in one of these upcoming games for the Marlins. But Quantrill signed in the offseason. Really, really struggling so far to start the season. And then you've got Connor Gillespie, who, credit to him, after a rough first inning yesterday, kind of hung in there to complete 5 innings for the Marlins. But overall this year, he's got himself an ERA close to 7, 141 whip, averaging about 10 hits per 9. So guys are hitting him as well. It's not super pretty for the Marlins rotation right now. And that includes a guy like Sandy. Sandy's probably the most disappointing out of any of these guys, as he's got a 727. But his thing is right now is the walks. He's averaging about 5 walks per 9 innings. And that's what's really hurting him, is he's constantly getting himself behind in counts and putting himself in positions where he's got to throw guys really quality pitches, or pitches that are right over the plate. And guys know it, because when you get down 3-0, 3-1, what are you going to see? You're going to see something over the plate, or it's going to be a walk. And with Sandy, they've made a point this year on the broadcast to kind of mention that he's been calling his own pitches. And I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the struggles so far this season, in terms of, is there a pitch sequencing issue? Is it just locating? But I think he might benefit from a catcher calling his games here. Not that I don't think he can do it. I think he is capable of it. But coming off of an injury and, not really having that feel for live in-game pitching for, nearly 2 years, and then getting back into it and saying, okay, well, I'm going to call my pitches. I know what, the right way to attack this batter is. Maybe that's not the best thing for Sandy just yet. Maybe he gets there at some point. But right now, I think it might be a good idea for him to kind of allow a catcher, somebody from a different perspective who can kind of view the game from a different lens. It's very similar to golf, where you've got like a caddy, right? Sometimes you need somebody to tell you, well, you don't have enough club for that shot. You don't have that today. Let's try something else. And I think that's kind of what Sandy needs here right now, is just somebody to kind of guide him through the game, at least in the early part of this season, as he gets more familiar with getting back onto the mound and getting back into that game action at that major league level. But he's got to get a lot better at this point, because this is not what the Marlins signed up for from Sandy. This isn't what Sandy expected from himself. We know the kind of competitor he is, and how frustrating it must be for him to not be able to go deep in games as he's accustomed to start the season. The good thing with Sandy is that the stuff is still there. He's still got the movement. He's still got the velocity. That the pitches are every bit as good as they've ever been, pitch for pitch, stuff for stuff. So it really is a sequencing issue, a locating issue. And I have full confidence that Sandy will eventually get back on track in that department. Edward Cabrera, if there's one thing that's consistent with him, it's that he's going to be inconsistent. We talked about his start against the Nationals and how he had, pitched very well. But, following the start against the Diamondbacks, the walks issue came back. He's up to a 6.5 ERA now, back around 6 walks per 9 innings. I don't know. I'm just not sure what it is with Cabrera as far as the location goes. But, I mean, you've got to think that he's beginning to get on his last legs when it comes to this. You just wonder how much patience an organization is willing to have. And I understand why they would have the patience with Cabrera, because you see the stuff and it's every bit as good as almost anything anyone has in their arsenal. The curveball is great. The changeup is phenomenal. He throws 98 to 100. You see all those things and you're like, yeah, that guy should be a really good pitcher. But for some reason, it just hasn't all been put together for him to this point. And as far as what else is down the pipe, Ryan Weathers, it seems like he's not too far off from a rehab stint. We'll see. As of last week, it looked like they were targeting kind of the start of that Dodgers series, which would be a week from today, for a return for Ryan Weathers. So he would have to really start on that rehab assignment like today, or this week to really get that going. So we'll see how that ends up playing itself out for him. But the Marlins sorely need him in the rotation to lengthen things out. Yuri Perez, it seems like his rehab stint will be starting mid to late May, which would mean you have probably an early to mid-June timeline on him as far as when he could be expected. And then, as mentioned, you have guys like Mazer and Snelling who, if they have 2, 3, 4 more solid starts at the current level that they're pitching at their respective levels, you do wonder if they get the call. You have Bielzo as an option as well. So there are options for the Marlins. It's just a question of can the line, and this is insane that we're even saying this, but can the lineup carry them through, this time where the rotation and the staff in general, because the bullpen hasn't been fantastic either. Calvin Fauché really struggling this year. George Soriano has been really bad every time he's come into the game, although he just kind of bounces around. He's more of a long relief guy anyways. But it's been a rough going for the Marlins pitching staff so far here in 2025. And speaking of rough goings, before I get into the biggest news of all, which I think, the fan base has been clamoring for, I do want to get into a little bit about the situation with the second base position. Because I think it might be time that we reevaluate Otto Lopez, or at least for a little while, as the everyday second baseman. Otto obviously had that scorching start to the season, where he looked like he was, on pace to really have a breakout year. But you go back now to his last 13 games, he's got a 530 OPS, no homers, 2 runs batted in. He had some crucial misplayed grounders yesterday that it looked like that was going to cost the Marlins the game. And thankfully it didn't end up doing so. But Otto really, really going through it right now. Big time struggles for him. He's going to need to pick it up because Javi Sanoa is hitting as well as anyone in baseball right now. You go back over his last 8 games, he's hitting 444 with a 1059 OPS. Obviously, he had the homer yesterday, 6 runs batted in, steal over his last 8 games. And he plays every position, but he is primarily a second baseman. And then when you consider that you've called up Ronnie Simone, who does a lot of the same things that Javier Sanoa does from a fielding standpoint, of a guy that can play second, a guy that can play short, can play the corner outfield spots. Haven't tried him in center, but I'm sure he could do a little bit of that. You do wonder, okay, well, is it time to maybe give Otto a couple of days off and see if that kind of, that time away kind of gets him going again? Because Sanoa right now, it's almost impossible to keep him out of the lineup every day. with the way that he's playing. He doesn't have bad at-bats. Every time he's up, something happens. He's seeing a lot of pitches. He's putting the ball in play. He's making things happen. He's a really good glove at just about every spot that he plays. And he's another guy that can cause you havoc on the base paths because he's quick. So Javi, I don't see a way that they can keep him out of the lineup right now, for the time being. And then the last thing is the Marlins did suffer an injury yesterday to backup catcher Rob Brantley, which led to the Marlins calling up one of their better prospects, Augustin Ramirez, who was the gem of the Jazz Chisholm Jr. trade, if you remember, last year at the deadline, from the New York Yankees. The catcher this year at AAA, hitting .258 with a .791 OPS, 3 homers, 12 runs batted in, 5 steals. I would pay a little bit less attention to the .258 batting average this year because he's had some really hard luck outs where, I mean, the guy hits the ball almost consistently 95, 100 miles an hour off the bat, and he's just had some hard luck outs to this point. Obviously, he had the fantastic spring with the OPS over 1,000. Really tantalizing combination of power and speed at the catcher position. He's played 58 games total at Jacksonville between last year and this year. 8 homers, 9 steals. So you've got a guy that's got legit 20 potential, maybe even 25 potential at catcher. It'll be interesting to see how the glove ends up looking for Ramirez, as that's still kind of developing for him. But he's just turned 23, so he's still a very, very young prospect for being in AAA. And, this is an opportunity that I really think the Marlins and the fans want to see him run with, because this is a guy that can be a middle of the order bat for this team this season. And it's just for no other reason than they don't have a lot of middle of the order bats. And Ramirez would immediately come in and be one of the best power options on the team, probably next to Mervis. But he provides the Marlins with something that they just don't have enough of right now, and that's power, especially from the right side, because you look at the lineup, and you've got guys like Sanchez, you've got guys like Stowers, you've got guys like Mervis who can really provide you that pop from the left side, but you don't have a ton of it on the right side. You've got Connor Norby, sure. Maybe Eric Wagman can hit one out every once in a while. Dane Myers has a little bit of pop in his bat. But Ramirez would come in and easily be the most power you have of any right-hander in the lineup. So you got to be excited for that. Hopefully he makes his debut at some point over the course of this Red Series. Obviously, the matchup tonight, Max Meyer versus Nick Lodolo. It's a best pitching matchup of the series, I think, bar none. But with a lefty on the mound, maybe you see Ramirez over Hicks in that opportunity to get his major league debut, and hopefully he runs with that. But the Marlins, a lot to talk about in today's episode. It was quite a bit that's happened over the last week. Hopefully there's good news down the pipe for the Marlins over this upcoming week, and we can talk about how the Marlins have turned things around after scuffling to the tune of a 1-4 record this past week. But my name is Eric Wiedeke. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Eric Wiedeke. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.